Hello there, and welcome to the Libertarian Listener with me, Chris Wilkinson. And in this edition, we've got the chairman and founder of the Conservative Alliance, James Hunt, with us. Good to have you with us.
Good to be here.
Right, so the first topic of conversation today is on the budget, which was now 2 weeks ago. What's your opinion on the budget generally, and what do you think it's going to do for people in Britain?
My opinion on the budget in general, I'll be brief because, of course, we can discuss finite issues a bit afterwards. Ridiculous. I know he's wanting to be bold as Prime Minister, but the amount of spending he promised in that budget, and I'm not talking about the day-to-day, let's just focus on the one big bit, 600 billion borrowed just for infrastructure. How can he afford that when we're not running a surplus? Where is he borrowing it from? They've been saying that, we're borrowing it because interest rates are low. That's what Jeremy Corbyn was arguing, and you all slagged him off for it. So what's the difference now? That's my take on the budget. It's just it's socialism with a blue rosette.
Yeah, Rishi Sunak talked constantly about his intention to level up the country, and he's levelling up government borrowing, national debt, and the tax burden with it. So it's a bit of a con trick.
It is, 10 years of austerity, flushed down the toilet. What was the point?
Yeah.
What was the point? You might as well just bottom the country out sooner so we could start from beginning again.
What do you think was the political impetus to change track? Was it the coronavirus? Because it was known at the time of the budget that obviously the coronavirus was around. It's just an excuse to spend money as though it was going out of fashion.
Well, don't quote me here. I might be wrong. But weren't they only promising 5 billion quid to help with coronavirus?
Yes.
Coronavirus weren't a big part of the budget at the time, if memory serves me well. What I think it is the Conservative Party trying to convince the Labour voters that moved over to them solely for Brexit that, you actually can trust them and we will give you all the free things you want as well, but you don't need to vote Labour for that. You can vote Conservative. That's what I think it is. But one thing that they're missing about the North and the South is that we in the North, me included, you're from the North, are you? I'm not sure.
Midlands.
Where are you
Midlands.
from? Sorry, Midlands.
Yeah, Midlands.
So well, basically anything outside of the M25 ring road is the North. Okay.
Yeah.
People from the North did not vote for jealousy. They didn't vote for apathy. They voted for opportunity and aspiration, and he's completely misunderstood that. He's misunderstood that. So the next election, I think, if they carry on the course they're going, they're not credible. You can't say that you're the fiscally responsible ones against Labour when Labour, in their manifesto, pledged to spend less.
Yeah, absolutely. The previous Chancellor, Sajid Javid, he was going to come in on a budget of an 18% basic rate of income tax, fall into 15% by 2024. We've now been robbed of that tax cut by the changing chancellors. Do you think that the amount of control that Number 10 has over the Treasury is now too much?
It's nothing new. Look at Brown and Blair. Blair controlled the Number 11 then, and that's why I think there was the big rift between them both at the end, just before Brown became Prime Minister. I do think there's too much control over it, but then again, I think government's got too much control anyway.
Yeah.
So, it don't matter whether or not it's Downing Street, Number 11, or the Home Office. It's all got way too much power.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Are you displeased at the fact that HS2 was given the approval that it was given?
I once was for HS2 on the argument that it was good infrastructure investment.
Yeah. Not
anymore. I think it's stupid. I think that it screams of vanity. It's just all vanity. The supporters of HS2 say it'll improve transport times, increase capacity and create jobs. But at what cost? Both our environments and our public finances are going to be left in tatters. But then again, why would a politician care about this? Just for them to be able to gloat in the future that they were involved in it. HS2 was their little project. It's all vanity for them. It's a waste of time. It's a waste of money. It's not worth it. There's no point. We're using infrastructure that's been around since, look at HS1.
Yeah.
The French Eurotunnel. This project, this tech is not new. It's not maglev, magnetic levitation.
Absolutely.
It's high-speed rail, but that doesn't work in our country because we're full of twists and bends, hills and mountains. Look out the window, enjoy the scenery, and stop trying to spend 45 billion to save 25 minutes. It's not worth it. Just look out the window.
And to think that people were up in arms about the Olympics in 2012 costing about £12 billion.
Yeah.
Do you think that part of the lack of outrage over the cost of HS2 is the fact that there's not a definite figure applied to it, that there's been no real accounting of the true cost?
That should be the outrage. This is not like, you go into Tesco and you're paying £2 for milk and it's going to be £2 until the farmer tells you otherwise. No, this is, it might be 45 billion, but just fill in the rest of the check. We'll fill in the number bit at the end. Look at Crossrail. How much is that costing? Government should not be involved in infrastructure. People seem to forget historically the railways were not built by the government. They were originally built by wealthy individuals, philanthropists. The railways only came into government control during World War II. Before that, they were privately owned. People forget this. But remember, we need the magic government to do everything for us.
What do you think that we as libertarians can do to turn that tide then? To prove the private is much better, much more efficient, much more beneficial than the public?
It's a difficult question because unfortunately where public finance is concerned and welfare projects, welfare across everything, actual welfare benefits to healthcare, to even public infrastructure, it's always argued on an emotional level, and libertarians, we don't come from an emotional point. Not to say that we're careless, we care a great deal, but we do not approach our policies from but this might be bad, it might harm somebody. If you understand what I mean. We don't blackmail one another into supporting something that we know is wrong but is good to win votes. So it's difficult. We don't want to bribe the public, but it seems that's the only way you can win the current state of politics, bribe them with their own money. What can libertarians do? Difficult one.
Because I think it's something that the party has to learn about, is how to appeal to the people who are very used to a big state or the state looking after them, suddenly being told to stand alone essentially and to be self-reliant. Do you think that part of the feeling is that people who are so reliant on the state, are they lacking empowerment perhaps?
Well, they've been around during the periods when government has come in and seemed like the knight in shining armour, but then it's remained. It's never, ever pulled them out of the hole it put them in to begin with. So they've become reliant on it. It's almost like a child. So it's going to be difficult. One thing I do praise Cameron and Osborne for, all right? I'm going to say that. Look at the last election. Question time. I'll always remember it. I'm a teacher. And this is this question was, or at least this response was poised to the Labour Party. I'm a teacher. But where are you honestly going to get this money from? If nothing else, Cameron and Osborne, well, it might all be undone now, but Cameron and Osborne taught people through austerity that nothing is free. But unfortunately, I don't think it went far enough. And I'm not talking about putting people in destitution, because they were still giving away, they were still throwing money at projects just to win votes. But I don't think it went far enough.
Yeah, they said that they were going to eliminate the deficit in 5 years. Then it became 6, then 7, then 8, then 10, then not at all. Do you think?
Well, they've practically given up on that now.
What are your thoughts on the fact that this Conservative government, I say Conservative very loosely here.
Conservative in name only.
Yeah, absolutely. This Conservative government will have borrowed £1 trillion since 2010 and would have increased the national debt by more than 100%.
It just beggars belief. And this is why people should stop believing that they're the fiscally responsible ones, because they're not. The Labour Party in the last election, by looks of it, would have been more fiscally responsible choice. And it beggars belief. But the Conservative Party is always very good, just like the Socialists. That wasn't real socialism. They're always very good at going, but yeah, you should trust us with the economy. Why? Why should we trust you with the economy? Deficit. The national debt has doubled. Yes, I know the deficit came down. So I do appreciate that argument, but it's been put back up now. And to what aim? To what end? It's just been flushed away. There were no point to any of it.
Do you think that's particularly dangerous considering the developments of the coronavirus, the fact that the stock market's now crashed, that commodity prices are way down, and that the deficit will very likely widen because GDP growth will probably contract? This is now a very toxic situation, isn't it? Because they were projecting £70 billion per year borrowing in 2 years, aside from the coronavirus developments. What do you think the real scale of financial disaster is going to be now?
We're heading, well, the OECD have already come out saying today that the economy, the worldwide economy, is already worse than the 2008 financial crash right now. All governments are doing are borrowing, pumping that money into the economy, quantitative easing, basically. They printed 300 billion last week and just pumped it into the economy. They drop in interest rates, but it's already at 0.1. Next stop is 0% interest rates, and you don't want negative. So we're back to 2008 again, but worse. And for what? Ultimately, for what? There was no point. We might as well have voted Labour in again and let them tank the economy once and for all so we can actually have a restart. Maybe that's how libertarians can get in. Just wait for the world to crumble and then rebuild it with new ideas of freedom, fiscal responsibility, and no more of this bribing the electorate with their own tax money. Because that's where it's all gone wrong. We're running, 86% debt to GDP? The country's gone.
What do you think that the Conservative Party can do to sort of get back to the traditional conservative convictions like the thrift and prudence of the 1980s in its current state?
It needs to do what Peter Hitchens says and die. As a party, it needs to die. It's been infected by the Liberals. The fall of Thatcher should have shown you that the Conservative Party was no longer savable when they stabbed their only electoral asset in the back in favour of the European Union. With Heseltine, they then put John Major in. Well, he just tanked the party, which was inevitable. Blair got in, right? Then you had Ian Duncan Smith as leader, right? And this was the big turning point, I think, for the Conservative Party. Remember? Just keep that word in hold, Conservative. He's a Catholic, Ian Duncan Smith is. And what were they wanting to do in 2004? What was the big legislation around?
Yeah, civil partnerships was on the agenda 2004.
I might be wrong, right? But there was a big fight between the Conservative Party and the Labour Party, and Ian Duncan Smith put a 3-line whip against it, trying to preserve traditional Christian values. Inevitably, they lost, and Ian Duncan Smith was advised that if they want to win an election, they're going to want Michael Portillo. Was it Michael Portillo that stood in 2005? Again, I might be wrong on that.
Michael Howard, I think.
There we go. I'm thinking of the other Michael. Michael Howard. Basically, they put him in
the decent one.
Yeah, the decent one. That's why I remember.
Portillo was the decent one.
They put him as leader to try and liberalise the party, to make it electorable, and then of course Cameron came in, and that was it. It's done. It's done. It doesn't conserve anything. It gives everything away. It chases election wins over its principles, and it does not deserve to be called a political party anymore. At least with Jeremy Corbyn in the Labour Party, you know what he stands for. You know he believes in what he's asking for. So you can't knock him for that. A man of conviction, a party of conviction. The Conservative Party allows it's a dog, right? Picture the Conservative Party as a dog. It allows its tail to be wagged by whatever opinion has the biggest force. And that ultimately is its downfall. It has sold away all of its values. It does not conserve anything anymore. It doesn't conserve family. It doesn't conserve Christianity, being our religion, the Church of England, Anglicanism. It probably behind closed doors is anti-monarchy, which again to a libertarian, But for a Conservative Party, those three things, crown and country, family and religion, they should hold those three dear, and they don't. So not even economically, socially, they're not conservative, and they just need to, as a party, it needs to die, and something new needs to replace it. And I think that's where libertarianism could come in.
What do you think is the current impediments to libertarian popularity? Because obviously we're seeing immense amounts of dissatisfaction with the two major parties at the moment, because they're both high taxing and high spending, whereas Libertarian Party is very low taxing and low spending. What do you think is required for people to make the switch?
if the Libertarian Party, or at least libertarianism in general, wants to get its opinion across, it has to be believable. And some of the policies, they're great in theory, but can you picture them in practice? Probably not. And I think that sometimes libertarianism is too purist. And that's not a bad thing, because the Conservative Party isn't purist, and look where it is now. But the Libertarians are too, and I say this as a whole, not a party or anything like that, too dogmatic. Yes, the Conservative Party is a big church, but in public, they're all singing from the same hymn sheet, even if behind closed doors they don't like each other. And I think that's ultimately its problem. Libertarianism doesn't show unity within its ranks. It falls upon the sword of its own greatness, freedom, liberty, low taxation. It falls upon that sword when the big questions are asked, because they can become quite argumentative as a group of people, and then it puts the normal general public off who are just asking questions. That's, of course, not to discredit the Libertarian Party UK. I'm just saying libertarians as general. I posted something in the Libertarian group that you would have thought would have invoked thought-thinking opinion. It was about the Rothschilds, right? And something the Rothschild Corp published in 2010. And they jumped on my back for scaremongering, and that it would make all libertarians look like tinfoil hat-wearing loonies. And I'm like, but I thought this is something you'd like. I don't think libertarians 100% know what it is they want. So that's just my take on it anyway. Nothing, of course, to discredit anyone I know. I'm a libertarian myself.
Let's gear it back to the economy. What's your view on the state giving us 80% of our salaried income?
Oh. That's a good question, seeing as I've just been, shafted today with that. On a personal level, as an individual, right now, I'm thankful it's there. And the only reason I say that is because our economy is not being geared up to help people like me save, to be prudently responsible with cash. I live paycheck to paycheck. Right now in my bank account, I've got £7, and now I'm getting paid on Friday. And I don't have flashy clothes. I don't have flashy objects. My most prized possession is my PC, and the last time I spent money on that was last year. As an individual, I'm glad it's there. Otherwise, I would have been sacked today without pay because the company couldn't afford me. On the other hand, the government should not be doing this, and companies should always be prepared for eventualities like this. And what the government does, or all governments, when they bail out companies, when they give them lifelines like this, is allowing them to be irresponsible financially, because they know that the government will be there to pick it up. It's difficult, because right now, without it, I'd be screwed. But I don't agree with it in principle, because just like with benefits, it's allowed, and the minimum wage, it allows companies to get away with paying minimum and not actually a value. And then the state subsidizes the rest through working tax credits and child tax credits and every other tax credit imaginable. It's all a big mess.
Obviously, this would be a very opportune time to abolish business rates, because obviously one of the major problems on the high street right now is the rental cost of commercial property. Do you think that by eliminating business rates, instead of writing a blank check to every business in the land without real means testing, would have been a better way of spending the nation's resources?
I'd cut quite a lot of the taxes, but in regards to the high street, business rates aren't what's killing it. It's its failure to adapt. No longer is there only one person working in the household, while traditionally the woman or the mother or the wife would go out shopping in the daytime. They're open 9 while 5 whilst everyone is at work, and then they're closed after work. So where am I going to go after I've finished my long day at work to spend my hard-earned money? It isn't to the high street. It is to the Tesco. It is to the Sainsbury's with the Asda, with the Argos inside. It's to Amazon. It's to eBay. I do not know the last time I spent my money in the high street. It's not practical. So going back to what I said before, this is showing the failures in our country, and one of them is there's no resilience in our businesses. They have not adapted. They failed to adapt, and they're still running on a model that worked in the 50s. And it's not for our time. But ultimately, to help businesses in times like this, just cut all the tax, because businesses are employing people. These people are buying products they are putting back into the economy. If you're taxing a business before it's paid its staff, it has to do what it's done with me and lay me off because it can't afford me, and use government subsidies to not lay me off but pay me whatever it could. But if there were no taxes, I bet the company could afford me.
Yeah.
But they've got to pay into my pension, which they shouldn't do, because if this economy collapses, my pension is worthless anyway. Right? They've got to pay into national insurance, which is also another big scam in my opinion. They've got to pay into business taxes, business rates, VAT. They get rinsed. They need all these regulatory bodies, need to pay all those subscriptions to them. There's no incentive to make money in business. Conservative Alliance that I run, right? Yeah. I get an average income. 50% of the monthly income for that company goes on operating costs and taxes. I don't pay myself a salary. I don't pay no one a salary because there's nothing left after I've paid operating costs. VAT, I do a lot of publishing, a lot of printing. VAT makes up about 30% of those invoices. It's ludicrous.
And now that obviously going back to the point about the private sector investment and things like that, it's been low for at least a decade, which is why productivity growth has been so, well, it's negligible really. And now all of a sudden the state is stepping in and ramping up public sector investment, which is just going to crowd out private sector borrowing. Yeah, it's a recipe for disaster.
But they won't learn until the entire global economy crashes, and then we're not running on the dollar standard anymore, and the dollar's worthless, and the pound's worthless, and the euro's worthless, and the yen's worthless. It's just a big merry-go-round. And until all these currencies are devalued to worthlessness, I don't think they're ever going to learn. And while public keep voting for them and believing the lies, why would they stop?
It's rather depressing, isn't it, when you think about all of these things?
It is, yeah. We just always, it's like a roller coaster. Strap in for the ride and just hope you don't fall out like it's Alton Towers.
Let's move on to other areas then. What libertarian texts have you read?
I'm not going to lie, none.
Really?
In the sense of, I know that makes me sound like a weak libertarian. I've not read them because the principles I already held without knowing they were libertarian. I don't look at text as a way to judge things. I look at its actions. For me, I decided young on that socialism was a failure. Just where I live, it doesn't work. It keeps people entrapped in poverty. You cannot climb out of it, and it doesn't want you to. I would say I'm conservative socially because I believe that there are certain principles we need to uphold, like religion and family, and I do believe in the monarchy, which is contradictory to libertarianism, but then I'm economically libertarian. But I also don't want to tell you what to do. You go about your business. I don't care, as long as you don't affect me or the wider community. I don't have any problem with what you do. But I've always held these opinions. I've never read them. It's only recently, being a Libertarian Party member, have I actually come into contact with names like, Frederick Hayek and stuff like that. Before that, I didn't even know they existed. Peter Hitchens, I think, is a go-to guy for me, but no, I've never read the text. I don't think I could, to be honest. I know that sounds again like I'm dumb. I just don't think I could.
I was just going to say, did you see Peter Hitchens' article, Is Shutting Down Britain Really the Right Answer? He published it in the Daily Mail, I think, yesterday.
I've seen everyone post it. Have I read it? No, but I did read his previous one about the fact that Parliament nodding through this bill is an absolute disgrace.
Yeah, absolutely.
Just nodding through this bill.
What's your thoughts on the way that this is going, like how they're handling it from a parliamentary point of view? Because this is quite unprecedented in peacetime, certainly.
All they're thinking about is their elections and their emotions, but you're in government. You're not meant to think with either. You're meant to think with practical opinion. You're meant to formulate your ideas from actual educative responses, but they're not. He's listening to Twitter. He's listening to the news. And he needs to listen to none of them and be the Prime Minister. His speech on that Thursday when he came out and said, some of you will die. But this is just part, he didn't say that. I'm just verbatim here. But he just said, didn't he? I'm sure you've seen the meme. Some of you may die, but it's a risk I'm willing to take. That's the response a government should be taking. You could take certain steps, like, social responsibility. But ultimately, it's down to us as a community. not down to government handing itself powers to then, police us with powers that it will never give back.
Well, I was just going to say, like, a lot of the things that the government wants to achieve in this respect are contingent upon us as individual citizens actually following the advice and actually doing it for ourselves as opposed to being dictated to from on high. So I think it's quite interesting the way in which the government is going.
I don't think Boris himself wants to do this, though, but he's listening too much to Twitter. He's listening too much to his opinion polls. Yeah. Stop worrying about your opinion polls, because once all this is over, right, and people realise that it was all for nothing, now they're going to look at the economic ruin, and it's screwed either way. So you might as well take it on the chin now, and at least you can be looked at like Winston Churchill that took the difficult decisions at these difficult times, and we came out better for it.
What's really interesting is in some of the opinion polls, he's now topping 50%. He's 52% in one of the most recent polls. And you just think, how on earth is he getting that sort of a rating when so far his response has been too little too late, and when he has done it, it's been far too much?
He's recovering on those bits. The far too much. It's pleasing the authoritarian lovies. Today, a Conservative sent me a message, right? And I say Conservative as in Conservative Party member. I won't mention my names, right?
Yeah.
But he said, totally bizarre that all radio and TV commentators are gagging for a military lockdown. I've never heard of so many liberal lovies demand a Tory PM become a fascist dictator. And that's from a Conservative that had been slagging off Boris Johnson only a few days ago for not acting enough. But again, it's that whole thing of just realising too late.
And then going far too much to overcompensate.
As James Madison wrote, governments have used crises to implement legislation to assign itself more power in the name of protecting you, the individual. But these same powers always have the potential of controlling you and making you a slave to the power that once protected you.
Yeah.
People have got to bear this in mind.
Absolutely. I think I put on the Peter Hitchens article yesterday, I put a quote from Ayn Rand in 1946. It was the author's foreword to the Anthem book that I'm reading. And it says, the greatest guilt today is that of people who accept collectivism by moral default, the people who seek protection from the necessity of taking a stand by refusing to admit to themselves the nature of that which they are accepting, the people who support plans specifically designed to achieve serfdom, but hide behind the empty assertion that they are lovers of freedom with no concrete meaning attached to the word. And it's very true. And this situation has borne this out. And it's very alarming, certainly from our perspectives as freedom lovers and lovers of liberty. It's a very disturbing series of events.
That people are embracing their own servitude.
Yeah,
they're happily embracing to be shackled just for the sake of a bit of, I don't even know what. Because you can't say there's calm in the air by this action. Look at what's happening in the supermarkets. There's no calm there. People are not being calmed by these responses. In fact, these responses, I think, are pushing it even further. That and the media, but we won't go there. Jesus Christ, it's just a mess, right? All those fake news stories. Boy, age 24, dies of coronavirus. Turns out, though, that if he hadn't have gone to hospital with coronavirus, they wouldn't have discovered he had leukemia. But they leave that out the headline on purpose.
Yeah, the media has been so craven for not just this crisis, but also over a series of years, perhaps decades. Because I distinctly remember, when Trump got in and he dropped the mother of all bombs on ISIS.
The Moab.
Yeah, but the tone of their broadcasts was like, this is the start of World War III. That's the impression that you got from it. So they're absolutely craven to try and destroy any sort of liberty or any sort of form of defence or anything like that of the individual.
Yeah, but all these industries have been overtaken by the socialists. The person that wants communism until it actually happens. Well, if you want communism, go look at the British supermarkets right now. There's a taste of communism. People, there's a taste of it. Empty shelves, can't get what you want. You're all fighting over loo roll. That's communism. But, the people want it in theory, but not in practice.
Absolutely. Well, actually, I suppose all of these calls for the measures to be intensified are like saying, well, it's not real communism yet. It's not real socialism yet. It just goes back to that old phrase.
I've written an article on this recently for Conservative Alliance. The article was called "Communism versus Nazism: Why do we condemn one while accepting the other?" Right, here you go. This all comes down to virtue. While fascists cannot claim that real fascism has not been tried because Nazism is a testament to the work of fascists, the left wing in our society always go with the mantra that it was not real communism, like that gives them a free pass on all the failures. They use umbrella terms such as Stalinism, anarchism, Maoism, Trotskyism, and the good old favourite Marxism. Leaders of communist states have always used the excuse that because Karl Marx never actually implemented communism, any shortcomings, tragedies, or crises born out of the now failed state can always be blamed on the inept implementation of Karl Marx's dream of utopia. The left will go just back to this again. They'll go, well, it wasn't real communism. And it is. This is communism at work. Go look at Venezuela. Our supermarket looks very similar. And the difference is we've got a more secure supply chain for now.
Well, this is another one of the media lies. They say that we're not running out of supplies, but if the supplies aren't getting to the end of the supply chain, then we do have an issue with the supplies. And yet there's all these experts and everything who says, oh, there's nothing wrong with it. Never mind the huge blowout in demand that has occurred over the past week as people have panic bought. There's nothing wrong with the supply chain. Well, there is.
Those experts mainly the supermarkets, and there might not be anything wrong with the supply chain getting to the warehouse, but there's not enough supply to meet demand.
That's it.
And this, again, is all borne out for the fact that we have, over the last, 50, 60 years as a country, exported all of our industries abroad because of European legislation mainly. It's cheaper. Now we don't make anything. Now we're reliant on importing everything. And look what the French did. They seized those trucks. If it weren't for the British government getting involved, we wouldn't have got them. But it's funny since then that these factories have now not been allowed to do any NHS contracts. And we're all reliant on other countries. But this just goes... It's good, this, in a way. It's showing what weaknesses we have as a country.
It shows what weakness communism displays anyway.
Yeah, it does. But then again, we've practically got a communist government in power right now.
We've got a multicoloured government, I think. It's gone from fiscal conservatism a decade ago to social liberalism when they legalised same-sex marriage, then into that sort of limbo when we voted to leave the EU. They didn't know what the hell they were doing for about 2.5 years. And now we've got British communism. So it's a multicoloured government, this one that's been in power in recent years.
The Socialist Conservative Party.
Just going back to that Ayn Rand quote, the extra bit on it is they expect when they find themselves in a world of bloody ruins and concentration camps to escape moral responsibility by wailing, "But I didn't mean this." I think that's quite an apposite quote.
I was having an argument with someone today at work because they were calling for, action to be taken. I says, these calls for action is what led Hitler to power, and look where that got people. Auschwitz. I says, you're going to take responsibility for when we get to this authoritarian state again. Yeah, well, that's not what I'm calling for, but that's where it ultimately ends up.
Yeah, absolutely.
And not even Hitler's Auschwitz, right? Because I'm going to say this, that's tame in comparison to Stalin's gulags, Mao's death camps. Yeah. If we're doing it as a numbers game alone, Hitler just doesn't even compare to communism. However, on the moral issue, the eugenics is what put Hitler, of course, right at the top, and the systematic factory killing of millions of people. But a numbers game alone, communism has killed, hands down, way more people. Again, I know we went off a slight tangent there, Hitler, but I was just pointing out again back to communism. It fails.
Yeah. Well, this brings me nicely onto the point about a certain comment that was put onto my Facebook post. The original post was this: well, the virus has just cost me 2 weeks worth of promotional work. I, for one, am getting very angry at the near totalitarian conditions we are heading towards. Anyone would think that we were at war. And then there are those who crawl out from the woodwork to try and score political points and push extreme agendas at a time of crisis. To me, this isn't remotely funny. And one of the people on my Facebook page put, quote, "Nice to see you're a eugenicist." How on earth can you make that assumption from what I've just said?
Was she a lefty by any chance?
Yeah, absolutely. Then I put, I don't know how you can muster any National Socialist influences with the comment I've made. There was a retort that says, Only a Nazi would call the Nazis National Socialists.
Oh my God.
It's childish.
Right. Dictionary definition of Nazi. Noun. Historical. A member of the National Socialist German Workers' Party.
I only said that to infuriate her because I know that the person in question is a socialist. So I wanted to call it for what it is.
I'm just throwing in that, that little bit there, which says only a Nazi would call Nazism socialism. I'm like, no, its definition pretty much says socialist.
Yeah, it's just absolute insanity, to be perfectly honest with you. All right, so that's been fantastic speaking to you, James, and I very much look forward to it happening again.
It's been a pleasure to be on. I'll invite you on the Conservative Alliance podcast when we do our next one. Thank you for having me.
All right, join us next time on the Libertarian Listener for more interviews.